Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about photo backdrops for your model railroad. This is a pretty big topic, so in part 1 we're going to cover the basics and get some backdrops printed. In part 2 we'll go through custom creating your own panoramic background and using Google Street View, Google Earth, or Google Maps for making highly prototypical backdrops. So I'll say up front that this method probably isn't for you if you have a smaller 4x8, 4x10 shelf layout that just runs along a wall or something like that. And that's because for around $100 you can get a professionally printed backdrop that will probably look better than what we're going to print here on our home printer. However, if you're like me and have a lot of layout, the print and stitch method I'm going to show you starts to look a lot more appealing. I prefer the print and stitch method not just because it's easier on my wallet, but the flexibility it gives me to be creative on the fly. If I want to add a road or a creek, trees, anything else for that matter, I can go in and do that without waiting a week for a print shop to get my files, do the print, and ship it back to me. I can test fit and make changes without incurring an expensive print. And, frankly, I'd rather spend my hobby dollars on things like rolling stock, having a bigger layout, than on a professionally printed backdrop. So as you can see, I do have a lot of backdrops that I need to print. And for the cost of about $60 in print cartridges, I can cover a lot of ground with my trusty laser printer. And that brings us to things you'll need. A laser or inkjet printer works just as well, and there are plenty of comparisons online to pick the right printer for you and get the most printing for your money on cartridges. I prefer laser because full-page ink prints can tend to be damp and prone to wrinkle a little bit more. As for paper, you can print on glossy paper if you're going for that look. I prefer plain paper, not just because it's cheap, but because it gives a matte, dull finish that I find better at blending with the kind of matte scenery that's going to be on your layout. You don't generally have glossy stuff on your layout. I don't buy HP certified cartridges because the quality of the knockoffs has improved a lot in the last decade, and usually I buy the knockoffs on eBay or Amazon for about $15 a color. Again, with a laser printer, those are going to go a pretty long way. Next, you're going to need a photo editing program like Photoshop or the freely available GIMP. I have an older version of Photoshop that works just fine for what I'm doing. Some of the newer versions of Photoshop, the ones that have that expensive monthly subscription, they have some pretty neat features, and I'll probably try some of those out someday. They allegedly can create scenes for you using keywords and mash up images and blend elements together better without input from you. But for the average model railroader, I'm just not sure it's worth the cost. For now, we're just going to be taking more or less finished panoramas, prepping them for print, and putting them up on the layout. So let's get started. First, we need to find or take a photo to use. Your camera's panoramic feature is great for this if you can get to the location you model, or just somewhere that looks like it. If not, you can do a Google image search for panoramas, or consider buying an image for about $8 to $10 from iStock Photo, Getty Images, or any of the stock photo libraries that are on the internet, because those images will almost always be available in high quality, and we do need high quality for printing. So it's important that the image needs to be large enough to blow up to a print resolution. Google shows you the resolution on images, and while there isn't a bare minimum per se, this one I found at 1680 by 674 is definitely near the minimum. It also depends on how much we're going to blow it up. This panorama doesn't make a very good print candidate for another important reason. The lighting is from behind objects in the shot. Our layouts are almost always going to be lit from the front of the scene, so our backdrops should be as well. So let's find something a little bit better. Here's a good one. 10,000 by 2819, nice and big, and the lighting is excellent. First, I load the image into Photoshop, and we'll use the Move tool to bring the image into our master file. This master has all the right proportions already set up for working in 8.5 by 11 sheets, as you can see by the grid lines. I also have a print file set up in the bottom left for printing the sections. The print file is set to my printer's printable area. If you would like either file, feel free to send me a message through YouTube or Facebook. Photoshop can seem intimidating, but don't worry, we're only using 5 to 6 tools in total and they don't require any artistic skill to use. Now with the file in our master, I resized the view using Ctrl- and Ctrl+, so we can get a better overview of the panorama. I'm going to position the new layer, which is our panorama, until I get the proportions I'm looking for. Ctrl-T adjusts the image further. Generally we want the horizon line no higher than 1/3 of the way up the first sheet. That's 8.5 by 11. In this case, the horizon line is too high, so I'm going to bring it down a bit to get the horizon closer to our rule of the lower third. Next, I pair the image for printing, and as a general rule, it will always look darker when printed, so I always lighten the image a bit. I do this using the Levels tool. I try to bring the far right slider down so it is at the level where the waveform is solid. This brings our white levels up so you won't have as many areas of deep shadow. If you're doing one set of panels only, we don't need to worry about this break in the sky. However, if you're doing 2 or even 3 sheets of paper high, we will need to fix our sky. I do this by using the magic wand tool to select portions of the sky and delete them using the delete button. I zoom in a bit to do a little touch-up of areas that escaped our magic wand tool. It's starting to look pretty good now. Now is a good time to save your work. With our sky cleared, we could use this blue background, or we could go to Google to find some clouds. I happen to have a file of clouds right here. So we'll just bring that in, and now we can start to play with our layers. Now we're going to use our resize tool to stretch and fit the clouds. The clouds are a little too dark, so we'll use our levels to brighten them a bit also. As you can see here, the lighting is a little uneven on the sky, with it a little brighter on one side. So I'm going to flip it around and use the transform feature to flip it horizontally. Now to fill this area here, we're going to duplicate our clouds by right-clicking on the layer, and we'll move it into position. And let's go ahead and flip it so it mirrors the other side. Now as you can see, we have this psychedelic angel pattern, and maybe we're cool with that, but let's go a step further and try to hide it a bit. To do that, we'll bring the new layer over, so it's overlapping this other layer of clouds. Then we'll go over here and grab this eraser tool. It's a little small, so we'll grab a bigger tool here. And then just start erasing some of these clouds so it blends a little better, and it's a little harder to tell this side is an inverse of the other side. We can now print up to 16 inches high on our backdrop, which is pretty decent. You could even blow up the clouds and go 3 sheets high or more. I just think the grid pattern and pasting the sheets on a surface starts to become more apparent if you print much more than 2 sheets high. So let's go ahead and print. To do that, we'll use our rectangle selection tool here, and we'll just select our grid lines. Now we need to merge our layers for printing by selecting them and right-clicking on Merge Layers. Decide if you're printing right to left or left to right. Either is fine. Let's say we're starting right here. Control Copy and then Control Paste into our print file. And remember, this file is already formatted for my printer's printable area. When you print the first one, make sure you're printing horizontally. Photoshop's default is to print vertically. And then let's grab the next sheet and go ahead and print it as well. We'll get into adding more details to our backdrops in the next part of this video. For now, let's do some cut and pasting on the layout and see how it looks. Because it's the top deck, I'm putting on top panel first. Normally it's bottom bottom panel than the top panel. It just looks better that way and helps you get the alignment of the bottom correct. However, because there's a slight shadow cast from the paper when you do that in a fashion like that, there's a slight shadow, and people are standing below and looking up at it, it's more noticeable, so I've been doing it this way so that there's no shadow. But like I said, generally you want to do it the other way because people are going to be looking down and that shadow is not going to be very noticeable. So I'm going to cut the top one first. Flip it upside down and cut the edge. And just Elmer's white glue. You can try alternatives, rubber cement. Careful in doing so because you can get it on your fingers, and then when you go to smooth this into place, you're going to get smudges on your paper, which especially on blue for some reason is very unforgiving. The other colors don't seem to be quite so bad. And with the bottom sheet here, I'm going to be doing both. And the bottom really can be a pretty dirty cut. It's going to be covered up with dirt and other ground cover. But, and again, you want to get that horizon line as close as you can, so I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of perfection on the end over here to get that horizon line to be as close as possible. Not so bad, and then we'll come in the next one and we'll fix up that slight amount of offset there. It's very cold out here, so I'm just going to make sure the glue is actually setting. So that's going to be it as far as we'll go for part 1. In part 2, we'll cover more advanced customization options using Google Street View and Maps. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.